All right, so are you ready to like really dive deep into some fascinating stuff?
Hmm.
Because today we're going to be tackling Noam Chomsky's idea of a universal moral grammar.
Oh, yeah.
Like just imagine, okay, if morality wasn't something we completely learned,
Hmm.
but it was partially hardwired into us, just like language is.
Oh,
We're going to be looking at a YouTube episode that really dives into this.
okay.
It's called Noam Chomsky, Are We Programmed for Good?
Okay.
From the channel, Philosophy Axie, but we're also going to examine why some people really disagreed with this concept.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's a pretty bold claim, isn't it?
Totally.
Chomsky's a linguist,
Right.
but looking at morality.
Right. So, there were some fireworks.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So to get where Chomsky's coming from, let's think about how kids learn language.
Okay.
They don't start by like memorizing grammar textbooks or anything.
Yeah.
They just kind of absorb the rules by listening and experimenting.
Uh-huh.
So Chomsky suggests that morality might work in the same way. Like there's an underlying structure we're born with
Okay.
that guides our sense of right and wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah. And one of the things that really stood out to Chomsky
Yeah.
was the existence of like these almost universal taboos,
Right.
things that are condemned almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Like murdering someone in your own social group.
Uh-huh.
That's like a big no-no.
Big no-no. Yeah, and that's pretty consistent across so many cultures.
Yeah.
So,
Regardless of specific religious beliefs
right.
or how someone was raised.
Exactly, and that's what really made him think,
Yeah.
is there something deeper going on here? Some
Right.
innate moral sense?
Is it just a coincidence?
Right.
Or is there something more?
Yeah, is there something more fundamental about how humans are wired? And that's the question Chomsky's trying to get at. And it's also important to remember that he isn't just talking about basic survival instincts,
Right.
like avoiding danger and stuff.
Right.
He suggests that we have a capacity for more complex moral reasoning. Things like fairness, justice, compassion.
Oh, wow.
These are qualities that set us apart from other animals.
So it's not just like,
Yeah.
don't eat the poisonous berries
That's exactly
to survive. It's more about our human ability to think about ethical dilemmas
Right.
and decide what's right and wrong.
Yes, in a more sophisticated way.
Okay.
Absolutely. But, of course, this idea of a built-in moral grammar wasn't exactly a hit with everyone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was a lot of debate,
Okay.
especially from evolutionary biologists, psychologists, and philosophers.
Okay, so then if morality isn't like imprinted in our DNA, then where does it come from?
Right.
Let's unpack those counter arguments, and maybe we can start with the evolutionary biologists.
Sure.
Actually, they have a totally different take on this.
They do. They look at everything through the lens of natural selection.
Okay.
The survival of the fittest.
Right.
So for them, morality isn't about some pre-programmed code. It's about the behaviors that helped our ancestors survive
Okay.
and reproduce.
So maybe empathy, altruism, fairness.
Yeah.
Those weren't good in like a cosmic sense.
Right.
It was just what
You're-
helped people survive in social groups.
Right.
Like being a jerk might get you kicked out of the tribe,
Yeah.
which wasn't a good thing back then.
Back in the caveman days, no.
Oh.
It was really important.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. Cooperation and fairness probably helped early humans survive,
Okay.
which means that individuals within those groups
Yeah.
were more likely to survive and pass on their genes.
Right.
So in a way, being good became biologically advantageous.
That makes sense. But what about like our environment?
Yeah,
That has to play a role in shaping our morals right.
of course.
We aren't born knowing the difference between right and wrong.
Right. And this is where the psychologists chime in.
Okay.
They emphasize the impact of social learning. We learn about morals through observation,
Yeah.
imitation,
Yeah.
and experiencing the consequences of our actions.
Okay, so imagine two kids growing up in totally different environments. One has a loving and supportive home, and they're always taught to be empathetic and kind.
Okay.
The other one grows up surrounded by violence and neglect.
Right.
I think their moral compasses would be very different,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
even if they had similar biological predisposition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings up a question.
Okay.
If morality is so heavily influenced by our experiences,
Yeah.
does that completely undermine Chomsky's idea of a universal grammar?
And then there's the philosophers.
Oh, yeah.
I bet they have a lot to add to this debate.
Oh, yeah.
What were their main concerns about Chomsky's theory?
Well, one of their big concerns was If morality is just pre-programmed, does that mean we aren't responsible for our actions?
Whoa, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Like if we're just acting out some moral code,
Right.
can we be held accountable for anything? Like,
Right.
oh, my genes made me do it.
Exactly. That's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
They also brought up moral dilemmas. Those situations where different moral principles clash. True morality, they argued, involves conscious choice reasoning.
Yeah.
And dealing with those gray areas where there's no easy answer.
Right.
It's not just about following a set of rules.
Right.
It's about thinking carefully.
So are we just going back and forth between completely opposite viewpoints?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. Was Chomsky wrong? Or is there some way to reconcile these totally conflicting ideas about where morality comes from?
That's the question, isn't it? And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
It's probably not an either-or situation.
So it's more like a spectrum.
Yeah.
We're not blank slates, but we're not robots programmed for good either.
Exactly.
So it's nature and nurture.
Yes. Think of it this way.
Okay.
Maybe we're born with some moral potential predispositions toward things like empathy and cooperation.
Okay.
But how those actually develop depends a lot on our environment and our experiences.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Like we get a seed,
Right.
but whether it grows into a healthy plant depends on where it's planted.
It's sunlight. It gets all these external factors.
Exactly. And culture has a huge role here. It provides the context,
Yeah.
the specific rules and expectations for how basic moral inclinations are expressed.
So even if there's some universal sense of fairness,
Right.
how that fairness actually plays out can be different from culture to culture.
Yeah, what's considered respectful in one culture
Right.
could be rude in another.
That's interesting. And if we look at history, we see how even if we have this moral compass,
Yeah.
it's not always strong enough to withstand like intense pressure.
Yes, or
The
manipulation.
Milgram experiment.
Oh, yeah.
I learned about that in psychology.
Uh-huh.
Didn't they find that ordinary people would hurt others
Yeah.
just because someone in authority told them to?
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
And it shows how powerful situational factors are
Yeah.
in shaping our moral choices.
Right.
Even people who thought they were good ended up doing bad things.
Yeah.
Under the wrong circumstances. And then there's wartime atrocities.
Right.
How do we explain that with a universal moral grammar?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It seems like when there's fear, propaganda, and dehumanization, our moral compass gets lost.
It's true. Those extreme situations show how fragile our morals can be.
Yeah.
It's like our environment creates a moral fog,
Right.
making it difficult to see clearly and hold on to our values.
So it's important to be aware of the things that influence us
Right.
and how they might be shaping our choices.
Absolutely. Even in small ways.
Okay.
And it also shows that morality isn't just passive instincts.
Yeah.
It's about the choices we make every day, like
Yeah.
helping a stranger even if no one is watching, speaking out against injustice even when it's risky.
That's a good point.
It's about actually cultivating compassion,
Right.
practicing fairness,
Right.
and making choices that match our values.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard, it's a constant process.
Yeah.
It's something we have to work on individually and as a society.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
Yeah.
But how does this nature and nurture thing affect how we see individual responsibility? If we know that our environment shapes our moral compass,
Yeah.
does that mean we're letting people off the hook for doing bad things?
That's a great question, and it's a really important one.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging that environment and experience have an influence.
Right.
Doesn't mean someone isn't responsible,
Okay.
but it does mean we need to have a more nuanced view.
So it's not about making excuses.
Right.
It's about understanding why people do things.
Yeah, and finding better solutions.
Right.
Take the criminal justice system, for example.
Okay.
If we accept that environment plays a role in moral development,
Yeah.
then just punishing offenders might not be the best way to deal with crime.
Yeah, it's like you did something bad, now go sit in a cell and think about it.
Exactly.
But that doesn't really solve the problem.
No, it doesn't address the reasons why the crime happened.
Right.
It might be better to focus on rehabilitation, like helping with poverty, lack of opportunity,
Okay.
trauma, and giving people support so they can make better choices.
So things like education, job training, mental health services,
Right.
that could be seen as the moral thing to do.
Exactly. Everyone deserves a chance to turn their life around.
Okay.
It's about creating an environment where people can grow morally,
Yeah.
both in prison and in society.
And this idea of a supportive environment goes beyond crime.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's about how we treat each other every day.
Right.
The kind of world we create for the future.
Absolutely. If we want to live in a world with compassion and justice,
Right.
we need to build systems that reflect those values.
Yeah.
That means dealing with things like inequality,
Okay.
making sure everyone has health care and education,
Right.
protecting our planet.
So even if we have a moral sense,
Yeah,
it needs the right conditions to grow.
exactly.
It's about creating a world where people can make good choices.
It's about taking individual responsibility and making it a collective responsibility,
Okay.
creating a world where it's easier to be good.
Okay, I'm starting to get how this all fits together.
Yeah.
We looked at Chomsky's idea of a universal moral grammar,
Right.
and now we're figuring out what all this nature and nurture stuff means in the real world.
And it means a lot.
It does.
It's about responsibility, social justice, the future we're building.
I guess this is where we go even deeper
Yes.
into what it means to be a moral person today.
Exactly. That's what we're doing in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready. Listeners, are you ready? This is where it gets interesting. So we've been talking about this idea of a universal moral grammar,
Right.
looking at what Chomsky said and all the pushback he got. So where do we stand now?
I think it all comes back to this idea of shared responsibility.
Okay.
Whether or not we're born with a moral code, we still have to make choices.
Right.
And when we understand how much our environment affects us, it should make us want to build a world where it's easier to make good choices.
So we can't just blame bad genes or a rough childhood.
Right. We have to own our actions.
Right, and try to do better.
And that's where the nurture part comes in.
Okay.
Parents, teachers, communities. They're
Right.
so important for creating environments
Yeah.
where compassion, fairness, and critical thinking can grow.
So it's not about forcing kids to follow strict rules.
Right.
It's about giving them the tools they need
Yeah.
to figure out what's right and wrong.
Yes, teaching them to think for themselves.
Okay.
Question things, empathize with people who are different from them.
And this isn't just for kids.
No, it's for all of us.
Right.
We never stop learning and growing.
We all face moral dilemmas.
Exactly.
Times when we have to decide
Yes.
the right thing to do.
Even when it's really hard.
Yeah. And sometimes there isn't even a right answer.
That's true.
We have to consider our values.
Right.
Think about the consequences
Uh-huh.
and just do our best. And the world is complex.
Yeah, it is.
There's no simple formula for morality.
And that's what makes it interesting.
It does.
But I think sometimes this whole nature versus nurture debate
Yeah,
distracts us from the bigger picture.
I agree.
Whether we're programmed for good or not,
Right.
the real challenge is actually living a good life.
Yeah. It's about being compassionate,
Yeah.
fighting for justice, and making choices that line up with our values.
And we can all do that.
Yeah, we all have that
No,
power.
no matter who we are or what we believe.
Right. It's about realizing that even small acts of kindness or standing up for what's right can make a difference.
Well said. So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
I want you to think about a time
Okay.
when you had to make a tough moral decision. What went through your mind? How did you decide? And looking back, do you think you did the right thing?
That's a really good question.
It reminds us that morality isn't just some idea.
Right.
It's something we deal with all the time.
Every day, yeah.
And those experiences shape who we are. So keep asking those tough questions.
Yeah?
Keep challenging yourself and keep trying to be good.
I like that. And that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into morality.
It was fun.
We hope you learned some new things.
Yeah.
Maybe even changed your mind about some things.
Hopefully.
Until next time.
Keep thinking.